Hey everyone, in the video today I want to show you how to focus stack so you can get tack-sharp images from front to back, and you can follow along by downloading the raw files via the link below. Alright, let's go. So what is focus stacking? Focus stacking is when we take multiple exposures, each focusing at a different point within the frame, so we can stitch it all together to create an image with an infinite depth of field, being sharp from front to back. So when do we use focus stacking? Well, typically we're going to use it when our f-stop is not giving us enough coverage with our depth of field, and this will often happen when we want to get ultra close to our foreground matter. So here's a typical scenario here. I've got these beautiful trees in the background with these ferns as my foreground. With the composition up around this height, I'm not really liking the impact and the depth that the ferns are giving me. I feel like being way down closer gives me a far better image. When I'm doing that, even if I'm at f16 or f18, I'm seeing that I'm blurry in the background. Or if I focus on the background, I'm blurry in the foreground. This is the perfect scenario for using focus stacking. How do we execute it? Well, there's a few different ways you can go about it. One of my main tips though is when you are doing a focus stack, still use a narrow aperture if you can, so that way each exposure you take gives you greater coverage. Don't do them at f2.8 for example, because you're going to need 50 frames. If you can still pull off f11 or f16, you're only going to really need 2 to 4 frames. So one of the first ways you can do this is using the manual focus on the lens. You could be on the tripod, you can do it handheld even. And what you're going to do is just adjust your focus ring on the lens to your very first point in the foreground, take your shot, adjust the focus ring, shoot again, and then continue that all through the frame. So that's using the manual focus. If you think you only need 2 exposures, then you can use the autofocus. And what I like to do with this method is point down. So I've got the focus point right on the front there. I'm half pressing my shutter, or you might use back button focus, whatever you like to do. Recompose, and then you shoot, which will be your foreground shot, and then you focus again, which is the background, and take the shot. So it's simple: focus, recompose, shoot, and then focus again and shoot. Now you've got your 2 frames there. And the last way to do it, if you have a modern camera, a lot of the cameras have this feature built in now, the focus stacking feature, and all you need to do with that is select the focus stacking mode, focus on the very first point in the frame, and then simply let the camera take care of the rest. All right, let's take the files back to the computer and I'll show you how to stitch it together in either Lightroom or Photoshop. Okay, so if you want to follow along, I've imported the 4 raw files into Lightroom, and what we're going to do now is click on one of them and then hold Shift and click the last one. That way all 4 are active. What we need to do now is open these into Photoshop to merge and stack the files. So now I simply right click on one of the files there. We're going to choose Edit In, and then we go over to Open as Layers in Photoshop. So we click that. Now normally you might want to do a quick edit first, have them all active, and then do your vibrance and saturation and things like that. But for today, I just want to show you how to get the stack done. So you'll see we're in Photoshop and the files are beginning to open up now as separate layers in that right-hand panel, and they're all stacked one on top of each other. Now our next step is to auto align these. So there is obviously that little bit of movement, one we were handheld, but more so for the focusing. When you change your focus point, it's called focus breathing. The perspective changes slightly, even if you're on a tripod. So this is why you can do this handheld anyway, and as long as you're not moving too much, it's all good. So what we do to auto align is go to our layers on the right-hand side, click one at the top or the bottom, hold Shift and click the final one. Now they're all active, just like what we did before. And we simply go up to Edit, up the top, and we say Auto Align Layers. And then we leave the projection on auto and we simply push OK. It's now going to align those layers, try to get rid of any slight movement that happened in between the shooting. Once this is complete, we then need to blend them together. So the alignment is finished. Now we go back to Edit again, and this time we say Auto Blend Layers. We click that. We leave it on the default, which is to stack images, and I leave the seamless tones selected as well as a content aware feel. Now we just push OK. This is the part where you hope that there's no dramas. If you're focus stacking in high wind, you're just asking for trouble. If you're getting ridiculously close with a shallow depth of field, like say f2.8, and doing a focus stack that way, it could struggle because the backgrounds are so blurry. So again, this is why I recommend using the narrow aperture when you can. So here we go, it's auto blending. When it finishes now, it's going to give us a new layer up the top there, the merge layer. So you can see that on the right hand side. What we do is we have those marching ants around the edge of the frame. We just need to deselect that now by doing Control D, or if you're on the Mac, it's Command D. Now, this is what you need to do. Zoom in, so Control plus or Command plus, and then I'm just going to hold down the space bar. And if I hover around the frame, you'll see the edges get that slight blur. That's completely normal. It happens all the time. It's good to keep that in mind when you're in the field, knowing that you need to crop in a little bit later on. So the main thing I'm looking for now, am I sharp in the foreground? Yes, we are. And then as I slide up to the background, we're sharp there. So sweet, it all worked. So what I'm going to do to repair that little bit of blurred edging, the best way is to use the transform tool. So the shortcut for that is Control T or Command T. And now what I'd like to do is hold shift, and I do one side at a time. And that's why we hold shift. So it's just holding shift, clicking and dragging upright, dragging off to the right hand side, down the bottom. And this is where you can actually really tweak that composition as well. And we're getting rid of those blurred edges, locking in something like that, for example. Now, if you like, you can go over to the layers, right click, and you can just flatten everything into one layer. Bang, now you're back to that starting point as if this just came straight out of camera. Then you can continue processing the raw file from here. So that's how you focus stack. Get them in as layers, edit, auto align, edit, auto blend. Alright guys, hope you enjoyed the tutorial. As always, if you have any questions, just leave them in the comments below and I'll get back to you. I look forward to seeing your edits, and I'll catch you in the next video.